Yes, indeed. This is Let's Talk Radical Radio, getting to the root causes of the important issues of the day. This on-the-air community forum believes your voice matters and welcomes all thoughts and views without judgment. Please join today's conversation by calling 415-663-8492 or tweet us at Let's Talk on KWMR.
Your hosts today are Paul Reffell leading the conversation, Robin Carpenter answering the phones, and I'm Mary Frank.
When you call in and hear the phone ringing, please hang on. When you hear me say you're on the air, please give us your first name, turn down your radio, and please watch your language. And
today we're talking about conspiracy theories. You know, I was wondering why conspiracy theories are so prevalent. Why do they spring up in the first place? It seems like almost everything that happens to humans has a conspiracy theory about it, behind it, after it happens. How do you tell a crazy conspiracy from a timely uncovering of dangerous misdeeds? Which do you readily dismiss, and what are your favorite conspiracy theories? Well, so it all started for me. So I guess my favorite conspiracy theory would be the JFK assassination. You know, the jury's still out, as they say. The commission that was formed came up with no real answers except the one lonely guy on the knoll, on the grassy knoll, with an old... no, he was up in the bookstore depository with a really old, defunct kind of rifle that was notoriously inaccurate, and yet somehow he fired one bullet that had an incredible path and hit two people and blew the president's head apart. And that's kind of where my interest in conspiracy theories started. I have a friend who did a lot of research into that and came up with all kinds of links to mafia, FBI, international mafia. His theory was that there were two hitmen brought in from Marseille, from the French mafia, who left Dallas immediately after the event. They were employed by the mafia and by the FBI and by the CIA because John F. Kennedy was going to try and do all kinds of things that none of them really liked. So, and someone's got their phone on. Well. And so, that's, who made you do that? That's what I want to know. And it goes on through. So there's, I have the list of conspiracies, so-called, that, it all started. There was a lot of anti-Catholic conspiracy theories in the old times, and it carries on with the Freemasons and the weird signs, all the cabals that are meeting, like at the Bohemians soon, coming up next month, I believe, isn't it?
Oh, Bohemian Grove.
Bohemian Grove. All the conspiracies involving religious faiths, the New World Order, the Annunaki lizard people who are actually running the planet, false flag operations, which it would include all kinds of things, including 9/11, blaming U.S. operations on other people. So
false flags
it's a wide swath we're talking about today.
So when we were just talking earlier, I had pulled up this morning the top 10 as of June 28th researched conspiracy theories were Elvis is alive, Obama was born in Kenya, the whole 9/11 conspiracy, that the Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 and MH17 are the same plane. MK Ultra, the CIA has a fabulous mind control program. The reptilian elite, Beyonce is a clone. The classic Area 51, the currently popular 9/11, the moon landings, JFK, and the grand unified conspiracy theory that all conspiracies are interlocking and all of the world's events are controlled by a single evil entity, which would be nice because then we could absolve ourselves from all the mess going on the planet.
Yeah, isn't that just? Aren't we all just looking for scapegoats? I mean, that's a
Well,
it's a
that
common theme.
depends. That depends on the situation. I had a very personal experience with conspiracy theories when we were making the movie "The Murder of Fred Hampton," who was the Black Panther who was killed by the FBI in the '60s, in 1969 in Chicago. And at the time, as we were doing our investigation and filming all the evidence and talking to people, it became clear that this is why I'm a believer in some conspiracy theories, that this was a special police force by J. Edgar Hoover. Everybody thought we were completely nuts, and yet everything pointed to it because all the evidence was there. And I'm from the Occam's razor school of thought, which is go what's simple and observable. And this was simple and observable. And, of course, it took 20 years for the truth to finally come out. But, and I feel the same way about 9/11. And, you don't have to go back you can go back very far to where horrendous things happened on purpose by the people in power, starting with, I'm sure it was before that as well, but Nero, who burned Rome and blamed it on the Christians, and then thousands of Christians were murdered. And when you look at 9/11, forget it, and this isn't even looking at all the films that the engineers put together about how impossible it was for the buildings to fall any other way except through explosions. It was kind of my education that, yeah, people will do that. Milligan in the time of Guinevere and, what's his name?
King Arthur?
King Arthur, yeah. They, what did he do? He said it was King Arthur who maraudingly attacked her, so then they would attack...
That's not actually history of...
No, but it's an example of something that goes on,
We have conspiracies even in our mythology.
Although
Hitler blew up the Capitol and blamed it on the Jews. Roosevelt knew 5 days before Pearl Harbor and did nothing. And so one of the things with 9/11 is in one of the federal buildings there was incredible research going on about vaccines. And all of that research was destroyed.
So I want to just bring up one point
so it ties in.
that I was talking to a friend of mine last night about, which the deaths of all the holistic doctors since the vaccination thing happened. But it looks like we might have someone checking.
Yeah, we'll get into the vaccination thing. What is the vaccination thing?
We have a caller. Caller, you're on the air. What's your name?
Well, my name is Charles, and
Charles who?
line in Marshall, so I'm also on the line with Paul from Marshall, and I'm going to let him go first.
Hi, Paul.
Hi.
Other Paul.
Hello, Paul.
Yes.
Carry on, sir.
I just start from the fact that paranoid have enemies. And their craziness is because of lack of information. They don't know who really is their enemy, and for what reasons, and the amount of hatred. All they know is they're being avoided, which creates an information bubble. Now, with the news, we knew the news, particularly nowadays, is all managed. It's called PR.
About managed by about 5 guys.
And we don't know the backstage of events, to use a term from social science, but we know that there is more than is being told. There's an information void, and a vacuum will be filled, and conspiracies exist, as does gossip in an organization. Information is generated to fill that void, and that's where conspiracies come about and then get passed on.
But do you believe some conspiracies end up being actually the truth?
Pardon?
Do you believe that somehow some conspiracies end up being the truth as time goes on and more information comes out?
Sometimes.
Yeah,
But,
I can go either way.
but I'm saying a lot of times it's just a creation due to the fact that we are very aware that we're being lied to.
Right.
Well, and you know,
Lack of
Paul,
trust,
what's really interesting, because I used to be in advertising NPR many years ago, is why we used to always say, get in front of the story. Do not allow a vacuum. Do not avoid it. If you don't come forward with information, people will create their own stories. That's human nature. And so always, if something's going wrong in an organization or something's happened that is bad, you need to get right out in front of it and start giving people the information before they make stuff up.
I think that that's a very good policy, and that helps. But I think there's a lot of organizations, and both large corporate and governmental organizations, that do not follow that.
Yeah, they prefer to deny rather than just own up to whatever's been going on, because partly, in some cases, because, the people will panic. Well, yes, or we'll make up stories or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's a good point, Paul.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll hand you over to Charles now.
All right.
Oh, geez, wasn't he long-winded? Finally, let's get him off the line.
You're never that way, so go ahead, Charles.
Oh, no, of course.
10 words or less. Okay.
I see conspiracy theory as a kind of intersection between modern cynicism and Americans' passion for religion, in the sense that people want to have a feeling of control over themselves, but they feel increasingly that the events that shape their lives are outside of their control. So it creates a story that allows you to fit all the pieces together in a coherent way, or apparently coherent way, to give meaning, an explanation to these events outside your control. And that's where the sort of religious aspect comes in. It's a kind of new Gnosticism, which kind of recreation of Christian mystery, which remystifies the world with these bits of unknowable information. So and then you sort of worship that story and that mystery. So let me give you an example: 9/11, or the moon landing, or the Kennedy assassination. Within, or UFOs. Within all of that, there's some element of information that is inaccessible. So you build this story about what happened, but in order to actually prove or disprove it, there's something that can't be known. I mean, in the Kennedy assassination, the person that needs to be interviewed has died, or the evidence has been destroyed.
Or been killed.
And the two Frenchmen have left.
They have. They've gone. And they're both dead now. But, yeah, so it's like the shadowy puppet master as God is what we're looking for. We're looking for the God in the machine who's organizing everything around us, and it's not our fault, but there's some hand at work that is guiding our lives.
Well, that's right, but the important of the mysterious aspect of it is that it then never needs to result in a conclusion, which would lead to an action. It always is ends slightly before that. Okay, well, if this is true, because we've now proved it, right? You can never prove it. Then you would have to act. You would have to change the way that you behaved. That's why I would relate it more to religion and worship. It is a fascinating tale, inscrutable, like the Holy Trinity or something like that. And you never quite have to act. You only have to know.
Yeah, but I think we have to acknowledge that plenty of conspiracy theories have turned out to be true when more information has been exposed. I mean, it isn't all just a worship of mysticism and religion. Some of this stuff is actually, when enough information comes out, has been proven to be true.
There is a noun, conspiracy, therefore something probably exists there.
Okay, this is Let's Talk Radio with host Paul Reffell, Robin Carpenter, and I'm Mary Frank. Please call us at 415-663-8492 and tell us your feelings on conspiracy theories. You can also tweet us at Let's Talk on KWMR with your thoughts and opinions.
So, Charles, I'm curious because I'm thinking maybe you're talking more about like the inception of the conspiracy theory.
I think it's just how it functions. I'd say conspiracy theory, if you want a nice throwaway line, is the shortest distance between two facts. It does deal in facts, and there are conspiracies, and that's all true. I'm saying, how does it function in our minds in relationship to the way that we engage with the world. And so it's not that there isn't truth to these conspiracy theories, and it's not that, increasingly, as the stories we told about ourselves during the Cold War are breaking down, that we realize more and more those old crazy coots waving their canes on the street corner were right. That's all true, but the conspiracy theory, that's why related to religion, is more about how you allow yourself to know what's going on, but not to react to it.
Well, Charles, thank you.
It's a weird space that you go into when you engage in that kind of speculation. So it's not about the truth or non-truth, whether it's factual or not factual. It's more, how do we know without the consequences of knowing? And I think that that's the real problem in our society, is we hate accountability.
Well, but so putting yourself out there as a wacky conspiracy theorist is a step in the right direction, isn't it? I mean, you're actually doing something by doing that.
I think that's right. And
searching for truth.
I mean, we see more and more, elements of the person that's saying, hey, look, that's a conspiracy. Yeah, they were right. That's true. And you see the people who don't want to acknowledge the really malign forces that shape our lives, dismissing those people as conspiratorial. Mm-hmm. But I still think that there's a gap, and that gap has to do with wanting to have a sort of clear conscience about living in the American empire and benefiting from it, so that you would say, oh, yes, I know how bad things are and really bad people, but then not actually wanting to do anything about that fact. So you just deal in these stories about, how bad things are. And I think we see people like that,
Well, Charles, we have another
Fair
caller,
enough.
and thank you. We'll see what they say.
Thank you,
Caller,
Charles.
you're on the air. What's your name?
Oh, hi, this is Charlie, you guys. How you doing?
Hey, Charlie.
I'm up on a hill in Petaluma.
Aha.
Anyway, I just wanted to say, and I guess you all have been saying it sort of going around it, Dr. King, Malcolm X, both Kennedy, the thing that's conspicuous about the official stories about these people who were all progressive is that none of them were conspiracy, And so you're going to tell me that 4 out of 4, officially, that none of these things were the result of conspiracies that could have been generated by, God knows who. And, when you see the facts sort of growing and growing over time, like Charles mentioned, it creates a cynicism because the truth is powerful, and the feeling that you're being lied to, or at least blocked from hearing the whole story. I mean, 4 out of 4, none of those were conspiracies. My gosh. That's basically all I got to say.
Yeah, and we have a very dramatic example of something like that going on right now, and it's a very high number. It's now 53 holistic doctors, thriving, happy, holistic doctors who were healthy and young, all died in the last year under very mysterious circumstances. And I'm surprised that that's not in the news every day.
You see it in the alternative media, but there's nothing in the mainstream media. And one person posited that it started to happen right around when California passed the law mandating vaccinations and getting rid of exemptions. So, you see something like that and you go, that's really odd. Because I actually had asked a friend of mine, could they get the numbers on how many well-known holistic doctors had died the previous year? And I think it was 2.
Yeah, and all of these doctors were involved either in vaccine research or cancer research.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, those are 2 big
And the most recent one was just a week ago. See, you don't hear about it in mainstream media. It's in all the alternative media and the health media.
Huh.
Amazing. Okay, well, take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie. So,
certainly those the famous assassinations that were all done by lone gunmen finding their way in somehow, and that was very suspicious to me, I have to say, and that the fact that there was no organization that was backing it up at all. It was just, there was this sort of one of them was sort of vaguely Muslim, one of them had vague ties to Moscow, or even though he was a CIA operative, but it was all these sort of cloudy.
And one of them was Ted Cruz's father. And well, we have a caller. Caller, you're on the air. What's your name?
Yeah. Hello.
Hi, you're on the air. What's your name?
Noreen from San Rafael.
Hi, Noreen.
You know, I'm listening to your radio. I have a good friend in Marshall that suggested that I do. Paul, you might know Corinne and Fred.
Corinne and Fred.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. Anyway, you know, for starters, our world is owned by 6 corporations, our media. So Time Warner, Viacom, Disney, GE, and CBS, the six major corporations, have locked up our mainstream media. So when we wonder why we haven't heard about it in the mainstream media, that is a good place to start. It's very difficult to get our news that is significant for us to know.
And, you know, that happened thanks to Bill Clinton with the Telecom Deregulation Act under his presidency, which took away all of the rules and regulations that did not allow anyone to own a TV station and a radio station and a newspaper all in the same market. No one could own more than, I think, 10 across the country. There were rules and regulations put in place to protect the media from being bought, and Bill Clinton deregulated all of that.
It does not surprise me. It actually started in the 50s with something called the Mockingbird Operation, where the elite powers that are still in place wanted to know, they sat down and said, how can we control the world? Well, one of the areas was media.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah.
Govern information.
On the line, the other thing I wanted to say is that there's tremendous amount of deception going on. And some of the ones that are pretty sloppy to take a look at is the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting.
Mm-hmm.
It is so unbelievably sloppy. The whole thing was an absolute full-blown hoax. And it's an agenda to steer us into more gun control laws.
And I've heard that theory quite a bit from family members and people back in the South, because I will say, when it was first being reported, because I was home doing paperwork and I had the TV on and it flashed in, and there were they had cited 3 people, 2 men in camouflage with guns, as well as the shooter, before anyone was even on the scene that had been reported. So there's some strange things around that. I mean, I have to think it's that's a little difficult for me to believe, but I know a lot of people do believe that. Do you have other information about why that theory is?
Absolutely. Like, for example, the biohazard of the blood, when a few of the people in the town called to try to get the contract to take away the blood, the answer was there is no blood. That's a big one.
From the victims.
Yes. The other is that they're using crisis actors. And there's a scene that got caught on tape with this particular man. His stage name is Robbie Parker. When he comes out to try to talk about his child, that he is trying to convince us all on the mainstream media that he's lost the child. He's laughing for a moment with a friend that we can see, and then when it's time for him to step up, he composes himself to go into tears about losing his child. There's crisis actors that are being used and paid money.
So are you saying, though, that the children that were killed, they were just innocent victims in the midst of this hoax setup?
There's really not a lot of children. They're pretty much saying that there's nobody that was killed. It was a FEMA drill.
A FEMA drill. So the children did not die. The elementary school was never shot up, or?
That's right. It was a FEMA drill that was staged. It was an abandoned school for a very long time. They completely staged it, and it's a production that's done by some of the major corporations. Like for example, they're saying that this one was a CBS, a CBS production.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, I know almost like this has been an awakening for me in the last 90 days, and I've had to just kind of sit with the deception is the word that I'm living with in my life.
So, Noreen, just FYI, next week we're actually doing a show on guns, so it'd be great if we can hear from you next week as well.
Oh, I'll call back.
Great. Thanks for calling in.
Thank you, Noreen.
You know, some of these things sound so extraordinary, but when you look at history and you see so many things that have happened like that, I mean, for me, that's a stretch. You know, that's just my personal opinion. I think that probably the kids were sacrificed. I mean, I would go that far because, you know, I find it almost unbelievable to believe that the government paid for dialysis for bin Laden 10 days before he was hit. Really? But that's a fact. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's pictures of bin Laden on vacation with the Bush family. So the waters are murky, there's no question. And that's what's, you know, I will go back to the media. When you can't get access to the full story, God knows what comes up.
Well, and then there's the perhaps necessary distrust of government and of the media, and you know, I'm certainly of a mind that corporations have a lot of influence over everything in our lives in neoliberalism world here that we're living in. But then there's also the possibility that there are biases, you know, the sort of cognitive biases that affect us all, and one of them would be confirmation bias. I mean, when you don't trust government or media or any information that you're given, somebody comes along with with a different viewpoint, and you go, hey, there you go. That's it. That explains it all. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I understand how conspiracy theories come about, I think, because of that, the confirmation bias and the lack of trust in the powers that be and the fear of the powers that be.
And I think
and how difficult it is to get the real story.
On the other hand, it's also easy to call someone a wacko, a conspiracy theorist, and say, "Where's your foil tint? Where's your foil hat?" and all this sort of stuff, and discount them completely. That all conspiracy theories are bogus. But you know, somewhere in there's a kernel of truth.
Well, and I think we're all, in some ways, we actually get much more information now than we ever did.
Because of the internet?
Because of the internet, and also because of cell phone. I mean, cops go crazy if someone starts taping whatever they're doing. You know, the ubiquitous nature of cell phone cameras and being able to take videos has really changed the world in a lot of ways that, you know, citizens are capturing you know, data and things that we didn't used to be able to do or to prove. And
it turns out that most of those cops are getting, you know, they're not being charged with anything. So that's the way it's always been, apparently. Yeah. And we're just now seeing it for the first time.
It's not a new thing.
We're just seeing it.
Yeah, we're able to see it. And the fact that they're so resistant to have, you know, on-body cameras and things like that well, you know, and that whole thing, I think what I've seen from working with neighborhood councils and what we had happen in Richmond with an amazing police chief, and frankly, my experiences with the inmate literacy program at the jail, the folks at the jail, their approach to things is very impressive. But then, you know, I'm down in New Orleans and Mobile and seeing things that are horrifying. So I think it's also just to say that there are good cultures in certain communities where within the police departments. Sure. But, you know, one thing, I mean, my husband Andy always says this, that there is no longer going to be any real privacy. And that's a good thing to some people and a bad thing to other people. But I think in a way it's a good thing because we'll be able to, you know, more easily know, see, record. You know, not only are we being spied on, we've always been being spied on, but now we can spy back and record and go back. But I think this is probably our time now. I think we're probably more cynical than citizens have ever been because of so much that has come out.
Well, the results of the manipulation has never been more clear in terms of what's going on with the environment, in terms of what's going on with the health of ourselves, and most importantly, our children. We're now seeing the devastating effects of greed at any price. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing is the deterioration of our culture and our environment and our children. So, I mean, it doesn't get more real than that. Thank God for the internet. You know, there have been several attempts to, like, shut it down and control it and control access, but the cat's out of the bag. It's not going to happen, thank God, because that was something that no one really counted on, who is behind a lot of all this stuff. Because if you do dig deep enough, you sometimes can get to the truth.
And you've got Anonymous, and you've got folks like that.
Wikipedia. I mean,
and
what's his name?
The latest
WikiLeaks.
emails.
WikiLeaks,
that came out. And, you heard Clinton spent 3 hours with the head of the Department of Justice this morning on her plane in a private meeting, which is horribly inappropriate when there's a criminal investigation going on. But, it was... That it actually hit somebody had saw at the airport or something that he got off his plane and went and got on her plane. And, it's really hard to hide things now, which I think it's a great thing.
I do too.
This is KWMR, Community Radio for West Marin, giving you all the truth all the time. 90.5 in Point Reyes Station, 89.9 in Bolinas, 92.3 in the San Geronimo Valley, and streaming live on KWMR. And we want to thank some of our underwriters. KWMR supported by College of Marin, reminding listeners that fall classes start August 22nd. Registration is now open with campuses in Kentfield and Novato. College of Marin offers opportunities to start or continue one's education. Financial aid is available. Registration and more information online at marin.edu. Let's turn a few pages over here and get to the rest of our underwriters.
Turning pages. Susan
Hayes, purveyor of local and American-made artisan clothing, supports KWMR, offering hand-loomed wraps, scarves, and sweaters made in Point Reyes Station, as well as American-made and fair trade clothing and jewelry. Open daily at 4th and B Street in Point Reyes Station in the Tomales Bay Foods building. You can also find out more online at SusanHayesHandwovens.com. KWMR is also supported by To Celebrate Life Breast Cancer Foundation, raising funds to help underserved women and men living with breast cancer. Through its Bay Area Breast Cancer Grants Program, the foundation supports nonprofits that provide direct and emergency services and believes that no one should face breast cancer alone. Information about how to get involved is available at tocelebratelife.org.
Okay, you're listening to Let's Talk Radio with co-hosts Paul Reffell, Robin Carpenter, and I'm Mary Frank. Please share your views by calling us at 415-663-8492 or tweet us at Let's Talk on KWMR.
Today we're asking what your thoughts are on conspiracy theories. Do you have a favorite one? Do you think they're just crazy? Have you found something to be true that you never would believe was true? So call in, and when you hear me say you're on the air, give us your first name, turn down your radio, and please watch your language.
Yeah, so distrust of government. So here is just a little list. Some of the conspiracy theories that were actually proven true. The Gulf of Tonkin Incident that justified our going into Vietnam. Watergate, of course. The COINTELPRO, which Mary knows something about. The FBI's infiltration of radical organizations. Iran-Contra, remember that one? Ollie North?
Oh, absolutely.
I see nothing wrong with taking money from the Shah and using it to buy weapons for the freedom fighters. Government misdeeds exposed by Wikileaks and Edward Snowden, and it goes on and on and on. So, and that was all, that's, since the 60s.
Yeah, it's
and
fairly
before
recent.
that, who knows? But since the 60s, in our lifetimes, there's this constant barrage of government or of corrupt government doing things undercover that have taken us into war. I mean, after 9/11, straight into Iraq. Why?
We're in more wars right now, I think, than we've ever been in. Other than the World War.
The old Iron Mountain, right? The Iron Mountain Conference, where they came up with the report that said war is good for business. Therefore, we should be in a state of perpetual war.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're doing that.
Yeah.
But what's nice is, to me, and I know I've said this before, but I am so glad this is all coming out. Because, of course, this supports my theory that you can't heal from lies. You can only heal from the truth. And the most gorgeous lie cannot compare to the ugliest truth. And the fact that it's all coming out is a good thing. And even though it's painful and difficult to get your arms around, thank God, because it's like the dream spell lifting.
Well, I think the harsh thing in reality is how powerless we are. We're facing these really harsh truths. I mean, I just watched the new documentary that came out about letting go of the world and holding on to what climate can't change, which is sort of the same thing, but just taking a spiritual, emotional approach to it. And, I think that's why we're seeing sort of the very unusual election cycle that we've had in the U.S. is that we are so frustrated with, we want action. We want action now, and the DNC won't even go against TPP. I mean, the smallest of things, and we're so frustrated by it. But you also see the government and other entities scrambling to hide and cover up. They know the truth. Well, at some point, we're going to totally revolt in, trying to get rid of whistleblower laws, trying to hide, where you can go in and see what's going on in an agricultural situation, and you can be arrested for documenting criminal behavior.
Right.
And that Edward Snowden, Obama thought he tried to have his plane taken down and have him arrested. And, so we're also seeing there are no good guys anymore. There are no, good old liberals and,
There are good guys, but they're not necessarily in office.
Yeah.
It just goes back to being the whole power of the people. I sound like a sick, I am. I'm an old hippie. But, they have that, but we have each other. And the more that people are aware, the more they stick together locally and do things where they can do things. It becomes more and more important.
What's interesting to me, I think it was Noreen who called in about Sandy Hook. So, the three of us are pretty liberal, and probably the things that we think are conspiracies we agree upon. So we need to remember, but we often have people, like some members of my family, who think I'm crazy about certain things like chemtrails. And so it's also when you hear someone who has a conspiracy theory that goes against what you can even imagine, we have to hold that space that we have people look at us that same way too,
Sure.
And it is interesting when I hear things. I mean, my my husband Andy is unflappable. He's very, very hard to get him angry. And when he married me, my son was just entering that lovely time of puberty, and it became this thing for Luis to see if he could get Andy angry, because it was just impossible. And one day he just said something about, we didn't really go to the moon. And Andy went ballistic. That is the stupidest conspiracy theory I've ever. Andy went crazy. So Luis, for 2 years,
That's all
he dug up. And we didn't really have that much. The internet access thing wasn't that. He would go to the library. He would look up. He would come home. He wrote a paper on it. He just constantly tortured Andy with the information. And Andy was like, you don't think he really believes that? And I said, I don't know. And Luis would go, don't tell him that I don't believe it. Let it be my thing with him. So for Andy, when I left today, he goes and do not go about the moon landing conspiracy. So if he's listening, he's probably fuming right now.
Well, they just made a movie about it, didn't they? Wasn't there just a movie made?
I think there was. Yeah.
I was just looking at a list of whistleblowers, back from the year 1515, where some Spanish guy exposed the slave plantations in the New World, because, back in Europe, most people didn't know about that. And it goes on, there's a handful of them all the way up to World War II. Smedley Butler, who exposed the plot to assassinate Roosevelt, and he happened to be a Roosevelt supporter, so he stood up and said, these guys are doing it. And guess who it was? It was business leaders. The big boys at the top, including George H.W. Bush's father, who was a fascist sympathizer, of course. And nobody was ever, it was called the business plot, and nobody was ever charged with anything, even though they were plotting to assassinate.
It's so similar to why they say Kennedy was killed, because he was going to clean up Wall Street. They cleaned him up.
Well, and expose the CIA and not get into Vietnam and all that stuff. I mean, it was, And since then, with Daniel Ellsberg and Vladimir Bukovsky, the Soviet abuse of psychiatry, and it goes on. And suddenly, in the 1980s, now we're into, it's like every year, Mordecai Vanunu, the Israeli nuclear weapons program. It goes on. And then in the 2000s, with the internet, it's just an incredible amount of whistleblowing going on, despite the laws that are in effect to shut people down and put them in jail. And
they're so brave.
Poor guy.
So brave.
Anyway. I mean, to me, Anonymous and the hackers and those guys, they are we don't have the fourth estate anymore of the press. And, the fourth estate was a balancing act for so many, generations. And I see now as our hackers and anonymous, they're our one balancing act to the truth.
Yeah.
And so I am deeply grateful for them.
Yeah.
I just want to remind everybody, call in and tell us your favorite conspiracy theory, 415-663-8492.
What shadowy cabal is controlling your life? That's what we want to know.
Well, we could talk about conspiracies in West Marin.
How about,
Or not.
Ooh.
Okay, well.
Are the lizard people here? The Annunaki here?
This is KWMR's weekly Let's Talk call-in show with co-hosts Paul Reffell, Robin Carpenter, and me, Mary Frank. To join our conversation, please call in at 415-663-8492. And we have a caller.
Hi, caller. You're on the air. What's your name?
Hi, this is Andy.
Oh, Andy, can you turn down something's in your background?
The thing on the computer. Okay, there we go.
There you go.
So while I was listening to you guys, and he didn't make me that angry. And believe in stuff like that. But so I thought, well, let me look up conspiracy theories while I'm talking about it, and I found one which is fantastic. There's apparently some people believe in this grand unified conspiracy theory where all of these conspiracy theories are actually all one thing.
Yeah.
And we're controlled by a single evil entity.
We talked briefly about that. But
who is the single evil entity apart from God?
And who are these people?
Aside from God, yes. I wouldn't know who that would be. But
so who are these people?
Reptilian people, as you
The reptilians, yes.
The Annunaki, yeah, right.
So how do you feel about the grand unified conspiracy theory? Because it lets all of us humans off the hook.
I think it's ridiculous. Whenever people come up with these ideas, like I'll pick on the moon landing thing, right? Or
there you go.
I mean, it's really, really hard to keep any kind of a secret for very long. The more people that get involved, it makes it really hard. So when something like the moon landing, which required, if they were going to keep it a secret, if they were going to make it up, right? If Stanley Kubrick had built a soundstage somewhere and they filmed the whole thing and made it all look real, it's thousands of people have to do that, And you would think that somebody would have spilled the beans by now, right?
Well, there was a big, yes, he must have done it because he was using a lens that was developed by the Department of Defense for satellite spying. And
of course.
Therefore...
Everything we use was developed by the Department of Defense, pretty
including
much.
the Internet.
So, so what about Area 51, and the aliens, and we had the aliens, because there have been people who are now, in their 80s, and they were in the military, and I saw the alien body, and we had it in our deep freezer, and those kinds of things. So there are people, how do you feel about Area 51? Because there are people that have finally talked on that.
Well, Area 51 is a real thing. You can go on Google Earth.
No, but what do you think about we have alien bodies? The government
you can't
does.
find the alien bodies, right? So,
Well, we can't see them, but some people did see them, and they've told us, and they were, and just to defend the reptilian alien thing, because I kind of believe that a little bit. Has anybody seen the video of the guy, the Canadian, who was like a big high muckety-muck in the military, and he talked about that, yes, indeed, that there are some aliens that are in powerful positions in different world government.
Well, that explains it.
Well, and if they are, they're obviously not smart as we thought the aliens might be. But they may just be here to take. Maybe they're just taking away our resources.
They're trying to cultivate the world to make it suitable for them, and then we become their food, right?
They're slaves. Oh, their food.
We could be their food, but then why don't they keep us healthier? Don't they want us to be organic when they eat us? Why don't they keep us healthier?
No, they probably don't.
That's just a conspiracy.
They have their own definition of organic. I kind of, Area 51 is a real place. I kind of have always wanted to believe that, we are being visited, but I would like to actually see some tangible proof of it,
right.
Instead of people saying that they saw something, but they can't prove it.
What about all the people that have had these abduction stories, many of them very well respected, intelligent, normal human beings, that with all these alien abductions?
Yeah, Preston Dennett's work.
Hey, I had another question for you. You know, you and I both...
What's for lunch?
Chemtrails. What do you think about chemtrails? Because when we first heard about chemtrails, when we moved out to West Virginia, and some of our friends were talking to us about that, we were like, oh my gosh. You know, we did not get that. And then over time, with the research we've done and what we've seen in our own skies, I'm totally a believer. But I guess I haven't really asked you. Have you changed your mind?
I could believe it could happen. I have read, but I haven't.
Just look up. Just look up.
Saying that, yeah, we're doing this, you know.
Yeah.
But to make it, I don't know that it falls into the category of a conspiracy, you know.
Well, a conspiracy by different agencies. Like, what part of it is to make rain fall in certain areas before it goes somewhere else. So there are arguments about, I mean, that's been pretty open about seeding, cloud seeding and doing things.
I knew about cloud seeding when I was 7 years old.
Right.
You know? We've been doing
But
it.
this is beyond that. This is like climate control, which is actually exacerbating the whole weather problem, along with
and it's
other
a classic kind of government response to a problem.
Go spray some stuff up there and see what happens.
Try to solve the problem by applying a technology, and then you have unintended consequences, you know.
And then you say sorry 50 years later. Oh.
Yeah. Oops.
Well, in 50 years, Washington, D.C. won't exist anymore. It's underwater, so that will help. Let's just hope they don't move out here. Okay, well, thank you,
Thanks,
caller.
Andy.
Yeah, thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yes, the moon landings, were they real? Chemtrails. Yeah, I don't, you know, I'm not sure if I just was not looking up at the sky enough in previous years, but when people started talking about chemtrails, and then I was in the Fairfax parking lot in Good Earth one day, and there was this checkerboard overhead, and I'm thinking, wow, that's weird. Do contrails really stick around that long? And I mean, I've seen it over Marshall, where the contrails widen out and become
It makes almost a thin stratosphere.
And we haven't seen real. I mean, just the
did
regular.
that happen before?
No, you hardly ever see regular clouds in the sky anymore.
Well,
Just watch every day.
You do see regular clouds, but
it's rare. It's rare compared to how it used to be.
Wait.
Just look up.
Okay,
they
so
sprayed us in West Marin
okay.
for 25 days in a row.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing that they sprayed us, but you do still see regular clouds, but you're seeing new cloud formations. And what that does is it creates sort of like a stratus cloud layer when the chemtrails, because they spread and connect, and those grid patterns, there's nothing that would do those grid
We
patterns.
don't know
like
who's doing it. There's a 24-hour real-time aircraft tracker online. It's great, actually.
But they
it's really
don't
fun to
track
watch.
military.
Well, so
Yeah.
you see a plane coming, and you go, "Oh, is that United coming in from Tokyo?" Because we live next door to an international airport, so
Yes.
you know. So there's a lot of planes up there leaving trails, and you check on there, and I still haven't found one that is unidentified. When I bothered to do that,
to check it.
I haven't done it for a
I'm
long
just
time.
saying, I just watch the sky for 3
Yeah,
weeks.
me too. Yeah,
and
yeah.
if you do, it looks different than how the sky used to look. The rain is different
The
than
rain
it used to be.
is different.
Oh, you know what's really interesting is Susan Hayes, when she and her husband went on a trip to Patagonia several years ago, Susan said the thing that really struck her was the color blue of the skies down there is so completely different than here.
Sure.
And I remember thinking, I do remember the sky being more like a robin's egg blue, a more like blue. It seems almost like a faded blue here now. And then I was looking at some pictures of some other friends that had gone down to that area and noticing that difference. But she was also saying there's so much, I guess, the closer you get to the poles, there's less debris in the upper atmosphere too.
Well, Patagonia has always been renowned for its clear sky. That's why they put the observatories down there. down in the Matacamas Desert because it's so clear. There's no clearer sky in the world than down there. So,
Yeah,
but it's covered in ice.
Yeah, and the other thing with the chemtrails is the soil testing, where there've been a lot of chemtrails. They're showing up with the
more aluminum.
And,
aluminum has increased tremendously.
Around the Mount Shasta area, it's been impacting a lot of grazing areas. That I've talked to folks there.
So why would it be there? Why would that be in a special?
Because those are the
I wonder.
particles that's assumed that it's aluminum and silver
Barium
and some other
something,
things that they would be using to create those chemtrails.
But
And
why
so,
Mount Shasta? That's
well,
just
that's
where
just
they've
the
been measuring.
air drift and where they've been measuring.
But that's just where they've been measuring. It's not.
I don't
Mount
know.
Shasta's
I mean, it would be
being targeted.
interesting if
There's a lot of information out. If you're really interested.
Oh,
There's
I've read it all.
yeah.
I've also
Yeah.
seen the disinformation, like
Yeah.
the photographs of the interior of a 747 with tanks in it, and
Yeah.
that gets put out all the time.
Yeah.
And that's been totally disproven. Which it's either misinformation or it's just stupid.
Let's go to
disinformation.
Let's go to
Right.
Occam's razor again.
Yeah.
Just watch the sky for 3 weeks in a row.
Yeah, I do.
And you don't see you don't see the checkerboard in the sky?
Oh, we see
I
that,
see
yeah.
it. Yeah, but
Yeah.
is that just because we happen to live next door to an international airport? SFO is 40 miles away. You know?
There's never been checkerboards in the sky before.
Well, I don't know that.
Well,
I
let's
I
see
don't
what
remember
our
seeing
caller-
it, but did I look at the sky 30 years ago? I don't know if I was
Yeah.
checking.
Okay, caller, you're on the air.
Hi, it's Lyons.
Hello,
Hi,
Lions.
Lions.
And I have to say, I have no belief in chemtrails.
Uh-huh.
I have seen tracked some evidence, and I'm not convinced that they aren't just normally occurring things. I don't think there are people up there spraying on us. It gets so fanciful.
Well, do you
Not
think...
if you do the research.
Well, so...
Well,
wait.
let's hold a
I
space
don't
for.
believe that research. I believe the
Yeah.
research that disproves the chemtrails.
okay.
But so,
That's
do you
all right.
think
What would
it's do you think it's possible that if a branch of government or industry decided that it might be a good thing to do this for whatever reason, that they would go ahead and do it without our knowledge? Do you think that's in the realm of possibility?
It feels too crazy to me.
Oh,
I don't
Okay.
think that level of craziness is out there. Donald Trump type craziness, yeah. But, yeah. Anyway,
it's huge. When he gets in, it's going to be huge, chemtrails. Believe me.
They'll be much longer and wider.
and bigger.
let's build the wall idea,
Yeah,
and that's crazy.
yeah.
But there are genuinely people who want to do that. But
Well.
I don't know. There are too many things that one could get weirded out about. I am not convinced. But thanks for talking about it.
Sure.
Thanks for
Thank
calling.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I don't know. I was into it for a long time. I'm not sure the evidence is enough for me to check it out.
It was interesting for me.
I mean, I used to say I was a sailor, and I don't remember. You do nothing but look at the sky because that's where the weather's coming from, and I certainly don't remember seeing checkerboard skies out in the middle of the ocean. But then I'm guessing they're not there either now.
But
even now.
what was interesting to me when I was just back home for about a month in New Orleans, Mobile area, and I have never seen the checkerboard pattern there in the sky. And for the first time ever, one morning we had like 4 super hot days because it always seems to come after hot days. And I looked up, and so there has been very little evidence. Friends of mine have said or seen that, and so we were in between New Orleans and Mobile, in the middle of nowhere, like Ocean Springs, Mississippi. And I said, "Look up," and there was that grid pattern, which is
It's certainly impressive when you see it. And,
Yeah.
like I was saying, I would not be surprised if it were chemtrails.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is even when you already have private cloud seeding, and you do not have to get permission from the government or anyone to go seed.
PG&E's been doing it up in
the North County.
We did it in Vietnam as weaponry.
Right.
We caused rain.
Yeah.
Oh,
We did weather control.
Weather modification was
yeah.
part of the Iron Mountain report, too. If you control the weather, you control the battlefield.
And so there have been lawsuits over that about people who seed where normally the rain would come, like it hit the coastal range and rain, the front would hit there. but then it would be raining before because people were seeding. So those other people weren't getting the water.
Yeah,
so
taking the moisture out.
So I think that is, and the fact that that is private and not governmentally regulated is slightly disturbing to me, because with water being such a precious resource.
And there are geoengineering conferences where they talk openly about, if we were to create a barrier to keep the sun from being so hot, then we could save the Earth from climate. Sure. I'm sure. I would not be surprised that someone was doing it.
The fact that you can privately seed things, you could have somebody like Bill Gates going, let's try over this one area for a year and see if the temperature shifts, or because that's the other thing, is technology is so outpacing any kind of regulation or any. I mean, with CRISPR technology and all that, you can create. They're already working with hybrid humans and taking human embryos and genetically altering them. I mean, things are happening so much faster.
The reptilians, and the reptilians will be coming to the Bohemian Grove very soon. When is that? Is that July or August? I think it's July. All the reptilians in the world will be there. The Bilderbergers and the Bohemians will be just north of us here. Anyway, thank you, everybody, for listening in, and thanks to all the callers today. I hope you tune in every Thursday at 11, because your voice really does matter.
KWMR does not take a stand on any of the issues discussed on Let's Talk. Opinions expressed on the program are those of the hosts and callers and don't necessarily reflect the views of KWMR, its board of directors, underwriters, or members. And next week, we're going to be discussing guns. Under what circumstances would you shoot someone, protect a loved one, your property, valuables, a stranger, yourself? What role does the government have, if any, in determining who has guns? We hope that you'll tune in and join the conversation.
This has been Let's Talk on KWMR with your host, Paul Reffell, Mary Frank, and I'm Robin Carpenter.